I had a hip disease to where I went to school in crutches. I had a harness that went over my shoulder that I hooked my leg up so I'd stay off it. Even when I had the crutches, I'd hop around on one leg and play basketball and baseball and football and everything. But I came back and I always felt like I had something to prove. I was determined to play at the highest level, and because they want you to hold equity and whatnot. I'd rather, give it to the people that I'm building with, give them the equity, let them have the same chance to create the wealth that I have. Okay. So if you're not giving the younger people a chance to elevate and you're not developing younger people, you're not building a business.
Elevate the hustle. Yeah!
Welcome to Elevate the Hustle, where we break down what it actually means to build teams, scale companies, and lead with intensity. I'm your host, Stanley Mayton.
I'm Don Piccirillo.
We have a special guest here with us, Al Sica. Welcome to Elevate the Hustle.
Let's go.
Pleasure to meet you guys. Good to see you, Dom. Pleasure to meet you, Stan. I should say, Dom, great to see you.
We usually start out by, who you are and what you do. But I think the interesting part is you guys obviously have a mutual connection. So let's start out with that. Dom or Al, how do you guys know each other?
Yeah, I'll
Dom,
kick it
you
off.
want to dive in?
Sure. So back in, I guess it was 2022, I decided to sell my insurance agency, Cody Group, and I was looking around trying to find, some bankers that would help me out. And a friend of mine had worked with Al and his team to sell his agency for a very, very strong multiple, and asking around in the industry, like who the top guys were to get you the top dollar. The same name kept coming up over and over again. So I was fortunate enough to meet with Al and his team, Pete Herman and Mike Fletcher, and a bunch of guys over there who did a fantastic job for me, both in the sale of the business and helping negotiate the earnout or navigate the earnout process and all of that. So yeah, that's how I ended up meeting Al. And I guess Al, we could kick it over to you as well. Like, how I thought you got started in this much later than it turns out you did, coming from our pre-recording conversation. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about how you got started, what it was like in the early days, and the evolution of your business and the insurance industry in general.
Sure. Well, listen, guys, first, thanks for having me. Honored to be here today. I don't want to age myself too much, but I did start my business back in the late 80s, okay, at 26 years old. And that was not by choice, by chance. I was a very committed baseball player in college. I played Division I baseball, and my aspirations were to continue to play professionally. But at 5'8", there was no Altuves at the time, and even though I had a very good career, I was told I wasn't going to get drafted, so I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew I wasn't going to try to pursue something without being drafted. So, I went to a headhunter. He said, get a haircut. And back then, we all wore our hair long and over our ears, and said, get a suit, and I'm going to introduce you to Liberty Mutual. So I was introduced to Liberty Mutual, and, Liberty Mutual was a direct writer, but they had a captive sales force. And they said, hey, we're interviewing 20 people in the local North Jersey office, Saddlebrook, New Jersey, where, I'm from Northern New Jersey, born and bred. And I said, great, but I got the job, and, was there about a year and a half and hated it. They were a direct writer, and what they tell me, Dom, is the folks like you, the brokers, were poison, and everybody should want the direct writer. And I was a hustler right from the get go. Basically working straight commission, and didn't know anything but trying to get new business. And every time I brought more business in, they'd find a way to screw it up or not write it, and got really frustrated. And it climaxed with me going through my 6-part graduation program, where the final straw was I had brought in a gentleman who, at the time, Liberty Mutual had the endorsement for all of the Dunkin' Donuts across the country. So I had 6 in my territory, and the same guy that owned the 6 Dunkin' Donuts was on the board of Burger King. And he said, Al, if you could do a good job with these Dunkin' Donuts, I'm going to basically suggest, we're going to do the Burger Kings. So he introduced me to 6 Burger Kings he had in the area, and we priced them. And we went for the renewal, which was 1-1. There was 6 of them, 1-1, and they had a slew more. And basically, Liberty Mutual said, "Oh no, well, the holding company was dripping money, but each individual Burger King, he would move money around." And our credit department in Pennsylvania was some young woman out of college, who was programmed, said, "Oh no, we have to get all the money up front." So long story short, that was the deciding factor for me, because if we would have got the Burger Kings, I would have got the endorsement for the country at 25% on every Burger King that was written around the country. Long
You might
story
still be
short,
a Liberty
my
Mutual agent.
graduation was well, it's so funny because now Liberty's just a company. They're no longer a captive sales agent. But the funny thing was, I went to I went to my graduation, which was the first week of January, and the reason I did that is because all the people that I went up to, 6 parts. We got together 3 times. It was fantastic. I wanted to see all the people, and I literally resigned at the final day when we all had to make a speech when we graduated, and I resigned, and they laughed. They all had a lot to drink, and they were laughing, all the managers. And when I didn't show up the next week, they said, "Where are you?" I said, "I quit." And they told me, "Hey, look, what are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know, maybe start my own business." And they all told me, "Well, most small businesses fail, this, that, and the other thing." Long story short, I went back to the headhunter and I said, "Hey, I don't like insurance. I don't want to be involved in this. Get me unlimited dollars, independence." And he said, "Why don't you do this?" So for 10 months, I worked as an executive search recruiter in the insurance industry, because he said, "Why don't you try insurance? Because, we don't have anybody doing that." So literally, I took the phone book and I started from scratch, and I called an agency local in North Jersey, and I called my buddy at Liberty Mutual, who didn't like it there either, was a salesman, producer. And he said, I go, "Give me your resume." In 3 weeks, I got him a job. Okay. And it started in 10 months. I got out of that executive search place, and basically, paid $5,000 to get out of a covenant, and basically started my own business. It was originally called Sica Consultants. I did it by myself. It was always geared towards growing the business, helping people grow revenue, profitably, growth and profitability. So even though in the beginning it was more bringing in producers, teams of people, soon thereafter, and within a few years, it became going to find insurance agencies for them. And I was really a finder at first. Okay. And that I was young. I was, like I said, 26 when I started. So this is, late 80s, into the early 90s. And I'm doing this and, growing my business. And then all of a sudden, the break that I got in M&A was the middle of the 90s. And Dom, you're probably too young to remember. Okay. Is that there was a big push for all the big banks to get into insurance brokerage. They were told, Wall Street said, get more fee-based income. Insurance was a natural. And, all these guys I was helping bring producers in small agencies and all that said, Al, go see all the banks. So I literally went up and down the East Coast in about 3 months and got all the major banks, PNC, Wachovia, First Union, you name it. Every single one that was getting into the business. Some of them hired me, actually, when paying me these huge retainers. But, there's agencies you may remember that got involved with that you might not know, names like Meeker Sharkey and Tribu. And so these were $25-30 million revenue shops. And the principals were in their 60s. They said, Al, go see what these banks are doing. Maybe we'll be the first one in, because their vision was, wow, they have all these customers, the bank. We could sell them all insurance. Well, guess what? They all bought these things. I started bringing these in, and I did all these major bank deals, but they really didn't work, because there's a reason why people open the door and go to the bank. And the people and guys like you, Dom, go out at the door to find the customers. The cultures weren't right. But that got me in the M&A game big time. These were massive deals. And by 2000, I hired my first person to back me up on the financial side, the sim work, as you know, Dom, right? And that person today is the CEO of one of the major growth strategies in the insurance business, World Insurance, a gentleman named Rich Eknoyan, who basically was the first guy I ever hired. He was a CPA, and he came in and he did all my backroom work in 2000, and now he's the CEO of a $850 million revenue national broker backed by Goldman Sachs. So that's when it really started, the early 2000s, when I really started kicking into the M&A. And then, the confusion that you have is, when we started Sica Fletcher, right, was when I partnered with Mike Fletcher, who came from Hales, okay, who was, one of our so-called competitors, okay. And Mike came to me, and I did a very large deal in 2012, a national deal that none of my peers have ever done. That was one of the big first private equity backed broker deals. It was a $635 million deal. And Mike called me up and said, "Hey, Al," he said, "I knew one of us would do it, and I knew it would be you." And a couple months later, he called me. He says, "I'm leaving Hales. Can you give me advice? I want to start my own thing." I convinced Mike. That was the summer of 2013. And then basically Mike and I worked together with Ray Somerville, who's our other partner now, was with Mike at Hales. And they came over together. Hence we changed the name to Sica Fletcher from Sica Consultants. And we started rolling, and we didn't incorporate till 2014. That's what you were referring to, Dom. But that's how it all started, and it's been unbelievable. Today we sit at the top of the table always. Been the leader in deals done in the last 10 years, year in, year out, in insurance distribution per Standard and Poor's, who reports all the different industries that do M&A, the leading advisors, the leading attorneys, the leading everything. It's been unbelievably good, and hence we met you, Dom, and obviously it was a great run, and you've done extremely well. And you know, in that, basically, when we started doing all this, just at the same time Mike came, that's when all the private equity money started piling in behind these brokers. And these private equity backed brokers really were the ones now that were doing all the investing. It used to be all the publics, Brown, Gallagher, et cetera. They still do it, and we still have great relationships with them. But we really helped the private equity money come in, to the point where if we bring the private equity money into any of these brokers to get them started, and we invest. We have 7 investments, and we've kind of redefined the way the marketplace. We become the market maker in this space, which I'm very proud of, because I've worked my tail off and still do. And now where we are at the top of the table. So it's been a great run. For those who know us well. We're highly regarded, highly respected. And I've been doing podcasts myself, in the last, 8 months or so, with all the major CEOs from the industry. So it's been a great run.
That's awesome, Al. So let's back up, because you covered a lot. And first and foremost, congratulations. You obviously have built an extremely successful business. I want to go back to a couple things. First, baseball. What
Yeah.
position? What position did you play?
Well,
And
in college, in high school and college, I played second base. I played Division I at St. Francis in Brooklyn, who in 2007 decided to do away with their program. But when I was there, it was super competitive. I was a leadoff. I was a 1, 2, or 3 hitter in the lineup. That was my forte, was my offense. I was a real good hitter. You couldn't strike me out. I think I struck out 3 times in 3 years, Division I. Hopefully, if they had records back then, I could hold one, in the country. I think it probably has one. But second base in college. Then I played in the semi-pro amateur leagues till I was 38. And
wow.
there we had, my buddy was probably one of the best second basemen I've ever seen at any level. Because I was such a good hitter. I played left field most of the time, but I was athletic. I was a 3-sport athlete, and I was pretty much could play almost anywhere. But my bat really was the big thing that people knew me for.
So my other question to you is, you mentioned in the very beginning, when you were looking for a job and you went to the headhunter, you said, I was a hustler, right? Give me all commission, I'll figure it out. Obviously, name of the show is Elevate the Hustle. We believe hustle is one of those genes you need to have in order to be successful. Question from me to you is, were you always a hustler? Did you always have it? Were you born with it? Did you acquire that skill? Let's talk
No,
about that.
I think you are born with it, Stan. I'll say this to you, and without getting into too much detail, but I was always the underdog, and the reason being is when I was a kid, at 9 years old, I got diagnosed with a rare hip disease. Okay, which when after I found out more people had it, it wasn't so rare. It was called Perthes, and it's where the round part of your hip flattens. And my mother was a very very great woman, but she was a tough Sicilian. And one day I'm starting to limp, and she says, "What's the matter with you? Stop it!" And we had to go to her doctor, who thought I had a pulled muscle at 9. You had a pulled hamstring. You don't pull your hamstring at 9. But anyway, they found out I had this disease, and literally, they had different remedies how to fix it. What I took the long route so I could still go to school. Otherwise, I would have been bedridden. You have to stay off of it so it grows back as you grow. So from 9 to 11 and a half, I had a hip disease to where I went to school in crutches. I had a harness that went over my shoulder that I hooked my leg up so I'd stay off it. And literally, the kids thought I was crippled or something. Okay. And I'd have to get picked up by a special bus. My mother didn't drive to go out. So I was always kind of on my way back. And then one day I showed up at school when it was healed, and I showed up at school and with the crutches off, and everyone's like, "Wow," like Tiny Tim or something. All right, and literally from there, I was always a fighter. I always fought my way. I was always a really good athlete. Even when I had the crutches, I'd hop around on one leg and play basketball and baseball and football and everything. But I came back, and I always felt like I had something to prove. And the funny thing is I played ball with a lot of really good ball players, a lot of good friends, and they were good ball players too. But I was determined, probably the only one out of our group to play in college, and not only play in college but play Division 1. I was determined to play at the highest level, and I did. And not only did I play at the highest level, but I led my team in hitting and stuff like that. It was a great run. So it took me a while to get the respect because everybody thought something was wrong with me, and I was always hustling. I was always very very focused on being the best I could be, and always thinking that I only stopped myself. It's about how your mentality. It was a mindset. But yeah, I don't think you can teach sales either. People say, "Oh, you can teach that." You either have it or you don't, right? You got to have the skills. So yes, I've been a hustler all my life and continue to be at this age. I'll be 65 in August this year.
That's awesome. I love that. And then my next question is, let's fast forward a little bit to, so we have a lot of viewers that watch the show and listen, and maybe they're just starting out in the insurance business, maybe maybe they want to get into the insurance business. The question is, you obviously do a ton of deals, you're brokering these deals, you're putting these deals together. What Two questions. I guess the first question is, what do these private equities look for, right? What are they looking for when they're looking to acquire an agency? Let's start there.
Well, the private equities are just the capital behind the insurance agent. What's evolved in the last 12 or 13 years is there's folks like Dom that might get to a point where they want to acquire businesses, and they build either regional or national business through acquisition and organic growth. And in order to do that, you have to have capital. And private equity loves the insurance brokerage business. It's the darling of private equity because it's residual, right? You keep your customers every year, you get paid. It's high margin, and you need the product by law for most of it. So they love it. It's the darling. It was the best industry. It's the best kept secret out there. It's not sexy for people to get into because it's boring and it's whatnot, but it is lucrative as all. So, what they look for when they invest is someone like a Dom who, is young, aggressive, has grown the business on his own. Okay. Might have already had a track record in acquisitions already. Okay. Maybe was borrowing, had a debt line or whatnot from a bank and wants to expand upon it. So they're really looking for a leader that's already had success and growth and acquisition. And that's really, you don't get private equity unless you're really going to acquire, because you don't really do it unless you're a huge organic grower. Like, you're growing 50% a year, 25% a year in, year out, which, as Dom knows, the bigger you get, those percentages get lower. It's
It's
harder to
harder and
do
harder
or,
for sure.
organically. But that's what they look for. So we've been able to bring money into clients that like Dom, who basically said, no, don't put me in choice. Okay, which is one of the private equity backed brokers that we put the whole deal together. I brought the money in there. Bob Hilb's the CEO. It was the second round. I helped Bob start the Hilb Group. Okay, when we did that. But it's really what they're looking for is people they can back. Okay, that have the initiative to take the business to the next level. And when we do bring that money in, we've invested and alongside the ones that we bring the money in. So it's like a three-legged stool: the operator, the Dominic, the private equity, the money people, and the Sica Fletcher, who basically is the guys that can identify the deals, get the deals done. And we're not exclusive to this. We have 7 investments. A lot of times when we put a seller out, all 7 of them compete against each other for the deal. So we're really, when we put Dominic out, he had different choices, no pun intended, Dom. Okay. But, Dom had different choices and, it was his choice on where to go. But, if we had 3 or 4 in his process that we were invested in, we disclose that up front. We don't tell people or influence people to go with whoever we invested in. But, it's not a bad play because we're pretty good at helping those grow. And then once the 3 to 4 years, usually the private equity gets out, and that's when there's an event on the stock. And that's kind of what we do. We get involved in that too, bringing the new money in. And, it's a double bang for us as, getting a big fee as well as, getting money out of the capital out that we invested. So it's been a great run. Michael Fletcher has been a great partner. He brings another element to my business. He's very much more of the economic guy. I'm more the rainmaker, and our partner, Ray Somerville, who became a partner in 23, came with Mike, and he's younger, and we're grooming, Ray to really be the next guy here, along with Pete Herman on the inside, but I have excellent people. I mean, the people I have is second to none. You're only as good as your people. If you don't realize that, then you're picking the wrong people.
Can you talk a little bit more about so for people like me that actually, I guess I think a lot of the listeners are agencies that were similar to mine, smaller to mid-sized businesses or people that are starting businesses that, hopefully have an exit in mind at some point, and maybe that exit looks like selling to one of these private equity backed acquirers. Like for people like that, what are some of the key things that they should be thinking about in order to maximize their multiples and the value of their business?
Well, I think, unfortunately, your industry, because of the renewals, you have a lot of B and C players. All right. You have a lot, and it's an aged industry. You got a lot of people that it went from great grandpa to grandpa to Sonny Jr. to Sonny Jr. Jr. And they make a good living because the renewals, a lot of them are local agents, right? They're the insurance guy in Mayberry RFD. They have coffee in the morning with the hardware store and the banker and whatnot. There's a lot of that still out there right now. Out of 40,000 insurance agencies that are out there, there's only about 1,500 over 5 million in revenue. So most of them are smaller, right? And there's a lot under a million that are still out there. And those are people that really don't grow their business, Tom. Okay. What they do is they kind of just sit on their renewals. So in order to really maximize the value, if you really want to get to a point, and most of the people that are doing these deals, you didn't do it to sell out. You did it to sell up. You repositioned your asset to grow faster and create value faster. So the way these deals are structured, as you get a big value up front, combination mostly cash and a small piece of the equity of the overall, which aligns everyone to work together and creates that continuous value creation. Um, but you got to be conscious of knowing that if you're aged and you waited too long to do this transaction, it's not desirable anymore. People are investors. They're not buyers. They're investors. They want to invest in guys like you that are young that want to grow. Why wouldn't they? Would you invest in something that you can't grow? It's just common sense. So you have to, number one, position your business that you're at least growing in some respect. You have to position your business that you've consistently had a path of success and, and have some type of residual factor, although we are selling life insurance agents. It took a long time for people to even value, because life insurance is non-recurring. It's you sell the policy and there's no trail to it, which is more what I do. You eat what you kill every year.
Right.
Um, and you got to have some depth. You have to have not just the guy at the top, and you have to have some depth underneath you. You have to have some perpetuation. These are all the factors that people look at: youth, growth, perpetuation. Those are the things that will get you and command you the best value.
And perpetuation, you mean having the right people on their team that are set up to grow the business. I mean, we're
If
obviously
Dom
in
got hit by the bus, Dan, if Dom got hit by the proverbial bus, okay, um, does the business still run the same? Is there
sure.
anybody that could jump in and be Dom?
Right. So the reason I want to go deeper into that, we're obviously in the people business. We talk to, hundreds of agencies on a weekly basis. And some of those smaller agencies they don't have processes set up, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have SOPs. They don't have the right people. They're still, doing a lot of the service work that they shouldn't be doing, and they're not out there selling. So, I mean, let's talk about the people, right? How do you find those right people? What makes the people the right people based on your experience?
Well, I think it's like I said, a lot of people, the industry's pretty aged, right? So a lot of people, they think a sale is that they're going to wait till they're ready to quit, and someone's going to give them a pile of money and they're going to walk away. But insurance brokerage, Dominic, you could speak to it better than anyone, is all relationship. No matter what the internet's doing or AI we've heard this for 30 years. I've been doing it 37, is my 38th year. We won't need the Dominics of the world anymore. It'll all be computerized and everything else. Totally false. Total false.
Dom,
Okay.
you should be a robot.
I
Yeah.
know.
Well,
I
exactly.
could be a robot.
Well, that's what the whole
But
thing is. So the issue is out there is that it's an aged industry. So those smaller guys really get, when we evaluate, and listen, people love our process. Dominic went through it. We're really good at what we do. I got really good people behind me, but they get told, I got these guys that are 60 and 70, and they'll say, oh, I want to slow down, or I want to get out, or yeah, that's okay if there's three or four of them and, one of them wants to get out. But unless you have the people that control the customers involved, no one will buy it.
right.
Okay. Or if they do, they're not going to put anything up front that's of significance. These deals and the values for insurance brokerage are some of the highest multiples in the country for any industry. Okay. So it's all about making sure that when you do a transaction like this, you're doing it to grow along with a big brother, not to get out. So a lot of these guys that are aged are getting an education. And I have to say to them, look, for 3 years, you get additional purchase price on top of the growth. So if you're not going to be in it for at least 3 years, why even do it? No one's going to give you a pile of money and let you walk away unless you have three DOMs underneath it. You already transitioned all your accounts for 5 years. And somebody really would believe that.
Right. And I think, back to you talking about having the right people in place and even in your business, having such a strong team behind you. I think really like with any business, which is what you read in all the books, that it took us a while to really understand is that, hiring high quality people and, allowing them to run with the ball, so to speak, makes the world of a difference. And I think for people out there that, are considering making that big hire or wondering, if this is the right person or not. Like once you find the right person, you generally know pretty quickly. And not only will it make your life better, but it'll also enhance the overall value of the business, which I think is what you've been speaking to.
Well, I think the big thing is, if you want the business to last, you got to start taking care of the younger people and elevate them. I can't, for years, people would say, well, and believe me, we've had private equity and some of our competitors have sold, recently. And we've had people come to us and want to buy us. And I always say, well, okay, what's the end game here? Because they want you to hold equity and whatnot. I'd rather, give it to the people that I'm building with. Give them the equity. Let them have the same chance to create the wealth that I have. Okay. And that's what you do. If you're going to build a business to last, which is what I'm doing now or what we're doing now, you have to elevate your best people into certain places. Otherwise, it's not going to. You could be greedy yourself and say, okay, when I'm gone, I don't care what happens to it. That's not what I'm doing. Like I said, I've made more money than I can even count. I won't even throw numbers around. It's ridiculous. When Michael Fletcher came at me and he wanted to tell me what he wanted to do and what we did and what he's done in the last 11, 12 years, it's astronomical. It's ridiculously good. But I want to give the others the chance to do that. My son just recently joined the business in the last several months, right? He's 29. My daughter's been with me for a while now. She's 34. She plays more of an administrative role. He's in sales. Like, he's doing what Ray's doing, what I'm doing, what my other 7 sales guys do. It's very lucrative, this business. There's a lot of cap money in it. It's very low overhead. So if you're not giving the younger people a chance to elevate and you're not developing younger people, you're not building a business.
What does it take? And I agree with everything you said, and I love it. By the way, I was going to tell people that if they need a loan, they could hit up Al, because he said
The Bank of Al. You'll be with Stan. They'll be with the rest of my family. The Bank of Al. Okay, there you go. Yep.
I have that bank too, so
I'm sure you
I know
do.
what you're talking about, buddy.
And nobody seems to ever get off the payroll. I mean, I don't know.
There you have it. If anybody wants a loan, give Al a call.
There you go.
Let's talk about what does it actually take to put together a deal? The behind the scenes, like I know you talked about what matters on the agency side, but the entire thing, like you guys get introduced to a guy like a Dom. What needs to happen to put the deal together?
Well, the first thing is Dom engages us, and then he's introduced to one of our top people that does the backroom work to get all the information. What we do is we create what's called a SIM, a confidential information memorandum, which is a book that I could take anywhere in the country and people would understand his business, not just the financial aspect of it, but everything he's doing. Right? That SIM's a twofold document for us. One is it's the Bible for our discussion, so I understand his business soup to nuts. How could I go out and promote his business if I don't understand it myself, right? And my people don't understand it. So usually we understand these people's business better than they do when we're done. Okay. Um, so do we have that book? Once that's done, we have what's called an internal strategy call. And that strategy call is pretty awesome because we talk about the business, but then we talk about the market. We get a sense for what the business looks like and then what the Doms of the world want to do. And we want to lay out all his options. When you hire us, you're not committing to selling your business. You're committing to having the best advisor in the country help you figure out your next steps with your business for you, your people, the whole 9 yards. So if Dominic turns around and says, okay, I want to go to the market and try to find a partner, we're talking about the marketplace, and we come back and we lay out our recommendations of the people we want to introduce them to. We do that, and then we run a process, which is basically a week-long set of Zooms. Okay, the greatest thing that ever happened in the pandemic, if there could be anything that's great in the pandemic, is Zoom. Because we used to do these, if it was a California deal, we'd have to fly out for a week, get a hotel, get a conference room in a hotel, bring in breakfast, lunch, dinner, a lot of expense. Now it's great. We do everything Zoom, and we do 3 a day, back to back to back. And we knock all the meetings off. If we have 10 people, we introduce them, we do them all. And the way we run our process, that book we create is so well done that, people write immediately. If they want to bid, okay, they price immediately off of it. We get term sheets right away. Tom can attest to all of this. This is exactly what I promise everybody. And then we want to put the Doms of the world in a position that the biggest problem they're going to have is who to choose. And we help them evaluate not only the financial picture, but what I tell everybody, it's all about people. Pick the people first, because they're all doing the same thing pretty much. Pick the people who you feel comfortable with. They're all different shapes and sizes. In Dom's case, he chose one of the smaller ones, one of the more ground floor ones, because he wanted to be more on the ground floor of the equity. Okay, because usually this equity grows over, a period of time. and every 3 to 4 years, 5 years is an event on the equity. And if you're smaller, you're going to have more of those events before you get big enough to have to go public. That then when you get into the multi-billions, you can't do it anymore with just private equity, unless you sell to a public outright, and then you're part of a public. But they're all doing the similar thing. So, once we go through that process, the term sheets, once they sign an LOI, literally 30 days of diligence, 30 days of legal, and you close. So a fast deal from the time you sign us up is maybe 4 months. A normal deal's 5, and a little longer is about 6. And
So
that's what it takes.
and I'm sure you guys are involved in the entire process, helping out with put,
Everything.
pushing the deal forward between the legal
Yep.
and the compliance.
Yeah.
So tell us, and some I'm sure there's things that make a deal get stuck, right? And I'm sure sometimes they're a
The
little
things that
silly.
make a deal get stuck, and there's not many really.
Okay,
It would make a deal get stuck would be or not happen is number one, if the seller gets cold feet. But usually, when they move forward in the process, the deals are so good, it's almost impossible. The financial rewards and the ability to create wealth is great. The biggest thing that sticks in the deal is not having the right legal counsel. We bring in the legal counsel into about 95% of our deals because you need an M&A expert in the space. Otherwise, it's going to cost you a load of money. And there's guys that insist on having their attorney, and I say, okay, I got to meet him or meet her. And I interview them. I ask them 5 questions. If they don't answer them right, I'm like, hey, guess what? It's not going to work. Okay. And there's been situations where literally I have fired the attorney, and he'll say, well, you can't do that. My client has to do. I said, all right, well, I'll tell them it's me or you. I just got you the $20 million. You're keeping them from getting it. Okay. So that's kind of what's happened in these things. But that's the thing that usually, unless the numbers really, really tank in diligence, and then sometimes there's a pause by the buyer. A lot of times, if it's not too bad and they're down in diligence, there's ways to skin the cat because they're private companies. We do this thing we invented called a true up, meaning that say you come light in diligence, say you had $1 million of earnings and you came in at 900,000 in diligence. We usually are able to create a mechanism after 1 year to get them back up to the million and still maintain that same multiple at closing, like they just deferred the payment for a year. We were able to create different things if people want the deal. And it happens. You lose a big account,
sure.
right? I just before this, I got a call from one of my clients said, Al, one of my clients is going to get bought. What's that going to do to this? I said, we got to disclose it and let it ride. Would you be better off having a bunch of money in the bank or not doing this deal and losing that client without the bunch of money in the bank? So, things like that. But, either bad legal representation, okay, or the numbers really crater.
And my other question for you is, you obviously had an extremely successful career doing this, and I mean, I love the fact that it's so niche, right? We run a niche business in the insurance space, so it's in obviously niche scales. Looking, go back to your old baseball player in college or your first job. Did you envision this? Can you envision this,
No.
or no?
No, not in a million years. I didn't envision, I didn't even know what I was doing other than I knew I was a hard worker. And that was instilled from my parents. My father was very regimented in his job. He was in the aerospace industry for 46 years. My mom was a housewife who was just, the oldest daughter of, 8 children, dependent. Her father was dependent on her after her mother died. And they just had great work ethic. So, they taught me the discipline and the morals and the ethics and the work ethic, but I ran with it. But insurance, I fell into it. I'm so lucky because to do what I do, it's the best industry in the country with the residuals. It's so easy. Every other industry, now we've invested in public adjusting. That's been the next segue because that looks like that's a blank canvas. And we started doing that because it looks like insurance brokerage. The only difference is it's not recurring. Okay. And it makes it tough when you get into diligence. These revenues swing, just like life insurance. It's not recurring. So you have to depend on the consistency of the revenues every year. in order to get a deal done. You had to sell the world on that. But no, never envisioned this. Never envisioned what Mike and I and Ray were able to do when we started Sica Fletcher has been so successful. But it's a lot of it's the system. And guys, I'll be dead honest with you. I'm not a corporate guy. I'm not a studious guy. I was a B student by design. Okay, I could have been an A student, but common sense and street smarts, A plus 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 plus, which carries me, an organization. I am to a fault organized like you've never seen. I work on a yellow pad for 35, 37 years, however long I'm doing, still do. Do I use the computer? Do I do emails? I do everything. But you know what? I'm not that guy that's up to speed on everything. I use this yellow pad and no one can read it except me. And bottom line is, it's been the secret to my success, the organizational skills. And my whole mentality is I outwork everybody. I'm working, you get an email from me 4 a.m, whatever it takes. And the more my back gets pushed to the wall, the more I come back to hard and work harder. That's the competitiveness in me. I'm a very competitive guy.
I love that. I love that. And I love that you're doing, I mean, one thing that does, I guess, surprise me, talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, they're more on the ADD side, like Dom and I, not organized.
All over the place.
Organization is not the strong suit. So it does surprise me that you say you're super organized, which is, I think,
To a
amazing.
fault, Stan, to a fault. Anyone that talk to say there's no one that works harder that knows me, and no one knows how super organized I am. I'm on top of everything. All my people can't believe it, to this day still. And I'm never gonna quit. They made my father quit at 79. The owners weren't even active in the business. They wanted to bring their kids in. He was sharp as a tack. He could multiply three-digit numbers in his head, but they made him quit. And sure thereafter, he got Alzheimer's. And, sure thereafter he was gone. And it was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And, my daughter says, that dad, you'll be on the couch with no teeth at 85 with a cell phone making deals. And you know what? If I am, God bless. I hope so.
Yeah, that would be quite an accomplishment. So
Yeah, listen, I'll sign up for that right now, Dom.
Sounds like a good time. So
Yeah.
before we get into our fun part called rapid fire, I do want to, I know you mentioned it before, Leaders and Legends podcast. Give us where can we find it? How can we find it? What can we
Well,
expect from listening or watching podcasts?
they're all on the Sica Fletcher website. First of all, there's 16 of them right now. I have, or maybe, yeah, there's 16 of them. Maybe 12, 13 of them are on right now, but I did 16. The next one's coming out on Monday, and that's from our marketing. We do email blasts. It's YouTube, it's LinkedIn, it's all over when we do. Business insurance was picking them up after that. So business insurance has them all, the first 12 at least. And now we just contracted with Leaders Edge. And not only they're taking the podcast, they're doing articles around them as well. So you pretty much can find them. You can find them on our website. I started it. Michael Fletcher asked me to do one of the business insurance webinars. I said, what does that entail? He said, like 45 minutes, I said, I don't want anything rehearsed. He said, well, I'll just have people ask you questions. I said, I'd really like to bring some of the CEOs on. Can we bring 6 guys on at a time? He said, no, that's not going to work. He said, but we can do podcasts because one of our guys is a podcast expert, one of our sales guys. I said, great. So I started with one, I started with the next, and started doing them. I'm having a blast. I named it Leaders and Legends because I view these people leaders, and some of the guys are guys that I started with that are legends in the business. And, the first one I did was Scott Wick from High Street Partners,
Yeah.
which is one of our super successful firms that we helped bring the money into and really put a lot of good talent in there. Scott's 48 years old. He's an awesome guy. And, he's first thing he said, he goes, let's clarify this before we start. Am I a leader or a legend? I said, well, first of all, I'm the legend. You're the leader. Okay. I said, someday you'll get there. Okay. But we have fun with it. And guys, I'm having a blast, and it's getting unbelievable touches in the market. Business insurance told us we were about 40% higher than anything they did last year. On the podcast we did, but it's like my life story, which is gratifying for me because of the impact I've had on all these businesses and how I've, helped build all these businesses. And a lot of them said how I've helped them, taught them M&A business and whatnot. And these are really accomplished guys. But the good thing is it really promotes their business too. They're getting unbelievable traction from it. Okay. And also now I have these things on my website that when guys like Dom hire me and they're going to meet 6 or 7 of them, I say, hey, there's 5 of them have podcasts. You could view them before we have the meetings. It's very valuable. So it's
Yeah,
been great all the way around.
That's
that's awesome.
amazing.
And like you said, right? It's about people, and especially in the space where you're going into business together, right? So you definitely want to get to know those people of who they are.
Every Everything's about people, guys. When you break it down, it's all about people, right? How you interact, business, personal, no matter what you're doing. It's all about people. I'm a people person. That's my strength. And, I teach my people, the same way. And listen, I got such good team of people, the best in the country, bar none, at any level. And, we compete with everybody at different levels. And I would tell you, I put them up against anyone in the country.
I love that. All right,
Amazing.
let's get into rapid fire. Some personal questions for Al. Best business book you've ever read?
Well, first of all, I hate to admit it, but I'm not a big reader, but a book called Good to Great.
Okay.
That's big emphasis on people in that book.
Yep.
What was your college batting average?
My last year, I led the team in hitting. I hit 316, overall 361 in the conference.
Nice.
361 is nothing to sneeze at. Worst job you ever had?
Probably a woman shoe salesman when I was in high school at a place called Orbax, a defunct department store.
What's your Starbucks order?
Either they're called Mint Majesty, which is like an herbal tea,
Yeah.
and a latte once in a while. I like the vanilla lattes.
Better than Dom's. Uh,
It's every time.
I make fun of Dom's order. Al, I have probably one of the most important questions since the podcast has been in inception. Is it sauce or gravy?
Sauce.
I'm a sauce guy too. Al.
Yeah. Yeah. Sauce. If
I
you're
I
Italian,
got
it's sauce.
I got a trick question for you. Which restaurant has the best meatballs you've ever had?
Which restaurant has the best meatballs I've ever had? Well, it's kind of funny because my mother, was a phenomenal cook. We ate 3 meals a day. If you weren't there for 3 meals a day, you were in big trouble. The baseball bat came out. So it's hard to top my mother's, but interestingly enough, I've gone to Rayo's a bunch of times because my cousin has a table there once a month. His landlord and friend of his is the owner. And they make a pretty good meatball. It's the size of a softball,
It
but
is. It's like
the
that
best,
big.
the best meatball that I like, and it's from a pizzeria restaurant local where I live called Uncle Louie's. That is the closest thing or replicates my mother's meatball.
I knew you were gonna say it was your mom's meatball, Al.
Yeah, yeah.
Stan married an Italian girl, and they made him eat sauce and meatballs every Sunday for
Every
years.
Sunday.
It's
Every
good for you,
Sunday.
Stan. It's
And
good
I
for you,
kept
Stan.
saying, guys, maybe we switch it up this Sunday. Maybe we do something different. Nope. It was
Nope.
the
Oh,
same meal every Sunday.
Stan, you can never get out of that, Stan.
Nope. Nope.
Listen,
Nope.
when my mother had sauce meatball sausage in the fridge of the free, my kids grew up. Every time they went pasta, meatballs, sausage, sauce, everything. They always had it, always ready to go with it. Eggplant parm, same thing. That's the way they did it.
I
It's
love
the
that.
best.
I love that. Well, we appreciate you coming on, Al. We hope our viewers enjoyed this. I know I did. Thanks again, everybody. Go check out Al's podcast. If you're looking to sell or thinking about selling, he's probably somebody on his team is somebody you want to speak to. Thanks again. I
No,
definitely enjoyed it.
appreciate it. You
Yeah.
guys are awesome. This was great. I really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing it.